What's up, Coach Hayes? What's going on with you?
What's going on, AG, man? Just chilling.
Man, we coming in, trying to, get a few people to come in and listen, see what we're talking about today. This is a pretty important topic. We're gonna talk about these grades and recruiting. We're gonna give people a few more seconds to get in. I need to reach out to Alan Cat and see if get people logged in, and then we'll talk about these grades and recruiting because it's probably the most important thing that we'll talk about, to be totally honest, in a while.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, man, how's everything on the coaching front? Are you looking at coaching this year, or Alan's on it? So yeah, he know what time it is. So we got Alan.
Yeah.
We'll talk for a couple more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get to work. What do you think about the coaching front out there? You got any? You gonna still keep coaching, or you trying to do your own thing?
Oh no, yeah, I'm still a coach, man. You know it's in your blood, man. Can't let it go. So of course, I'll be on the sideline. You know how that go.
All right. Well, since you're right here on Flex, you want to tell the people what sideline you're gonna be on. Because I heard a lot of rumors on the street. The streets is talking. So
boy, Jigga said it best. Boy, the streets be talking. And the funny thing is, I ain't saying nothing. So I'm still at Oak Ridge. I ain't got nothing. Ain't nothing changed here. But it's amazing how the streets be talking. Boy, I done heard I'm everywhere, but where I'm at.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I heard it. And we ain't even talk about it. But it's been out there like that for a minute.
So, man.
But hey, that's a good thing. You rather want more people you want people talking about you than not talking about you. That's a good thing.
Trying to tell you, boy, the rumor mill's spinning, boy. That thing going 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah, man. Well, I tell you what, man, we gonna go on. I ain't here to waste people's time. They gonna have to catch it on the rewind. Hey, man, we're gonna talk a little bit about these grades. As a high school coach, can you just kind of give people look into how important those grades are, especially with your job and you're helping kids, not just necessarily football players. You help kids all through school to get into school with your job. So can you kind of explain the importance of that to the people that might be watching?
Again, grades are super important, AG, when it comes to school, because the first thing, as they always say, the student athlete. So you got to be able to get into the university first before you can even play it down. So if you can't get admitted to the university as a student, you can be admitted to the university as a player. So again, the grades are super important. If you have your eyes set on a certain school or a particular league, and you know that their requirements are really high, then you need to make sure you strive for that early, especially in 9th grade.
Okay. Speaking of that, man, I'm gonna go ahead and start with Well, I'll let you explain to people, and then I'll get it. Can you explain the difference between a core GPA and a regular GPA?
All right. So your GPA comes when you look at your report card, especially for most parents, you see a weighted GPA and then you see an unweighted GPA. So the weighted GPA is calculating all of those honors courses, calculating any AP classes that you may take, any dual enrollment courses that you may take, college level. All that goes into your weighted GPA. So your weighted GPA can easily excel beyond a 4.0. So when you hear kids walking around, I got a 4.7, that's how they obtain those grades, because they've taken advanced courses, whether it be honors, AP, or dual enrollment. For your unweighted GPA, it does not calculate those honors courses. So if you're taking regular English 1, English 2, 3, and 4, the highest you can get is 4.0. So unweighted is on a 4.0. Now, to get to your core, in your core, it eliminates all classes that are not core classes. And I know you're going to kind of explain what those are, but it eliminates all of those classes, like your PEs and so forth, and it only calculates your core. So your core is not on your report card. Your core is not on your transcript. So typically, rule of thumb, if you take the unweighted GPA and you take 2/10 off of it, that's probably roughly your core, and that's just a rule of thumb there. So if you have a 2.7 unweighted GPA, you're probably going to have a 2.5 core GPA.
Okay, and so that I can explain a little bit more thoroughly to the parents. When we look at, I'm gonna read this off. This is directly from the NCAA website, NCAA.org. They say 9th grade, ask your counselor for a list of your high school NCAA core courses to make sure you take the right courses. The NCAA has certain courses that are considered NCAA core courses. So, you might be taking a class that says advanced math, but it might not be accepted as a course. So parents need to be aware of that. In the 10th grade, you need to register with the NCAA Eligibility Center, which is at eligibilitycenter.org. That is something, honestly, that a lot of people don't do. Most people, they used to be told don't register to your junior year, but now the NCAA is asking you to register your 10th grade year, and the reason being is, at the end of the year, they're asking for this. At the end of your 11th grade year, they ask for the official transcripts to be sent to the NCAA, because the reason is the next reason is that now you have to have 10 core classes completed to be eligible to play Division One football, basketball, whatever. Because if you don't have 10 core classes at the end of your junior year, then you're not going to be eligible to play Division One, period. And most people don't understand that. So let me read off, because we got all these parents that, say their kid is a D1 athlete, which I think is absurd. To me, scholarship is a scholarship. But since this is what y'all want, I'm going to give it to you raw. This is what they talking about. To be a Division One academic eligible kid. This is strictly from the NCAA. You have to complete 16 core courses, 4 years of English, 3 years of math with algebra 1 or higher, 2 years of natural physical science, including 1 year of a lab science. If you're a high school officer, so that means if you got biology, you got to be biology with a lab, chemistry with a lab. 1 additional year of English, math, or natural sciences. So if you've taken 4 years of English, now that will require you could either have 5 years of English, or you could have 4 years of math, even though 3 is required, or 3 years of science, 2 years of social science, 4 additional years of English, math, natural science, social study, foreign languages, comparative religion, or philosophy. So that completes all your 16, but this is the key here. You must complete 10 core classes, including 7 in English, math, or natural science, before your 7th semester. Once you begin your semester, you may not repeat or replace any of those 10 courses to improve your score. So what they're saying is, going to your senior year, at the end of your junior year, you can't, once you start your 7th semester, which is the beginning of your senior year, that means you can't do no summer school. You can't do no credit recovery. You can't do any of that. So I think it would behoove a lot of parents to make sure they have. And then the clincher of it all is, you must earn a 2.3 GPA in all your core courses.
Correct.
So the reality is, getting a C or under is killing you. A C or under is killing you, and a lot of people don't get that. So and then on top of that, you got to get the ACT, SAT scores to match, and you're going to talk about that a little bit. But just to let people know, if you do not meet those requirements, uh, then you can do what's now called an academic red shirt. But guess what? Schools really don't do that. They don't. They rather have the guy with the grades.
You got to be the man.
Yeah. Once again, now the new rule is, hey, they lose scholarships if they don't have grades.
Correct.
So they're not going to take a chance on you unless you just this kid that's the most phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
And quite frankly, there's not a lot of them really rolling around. Like, you got to be a can't miss kid, because we what's the boy's name? Byron Coward. Byron Coward and Martez Ivy. 4 years ago, that everyone was arguing about them was the number 1 and 2 best players in the country out of high school. Can't miss. Going to be first round draft pick guys, and neither one of them will go first round this year, and they might not even get drafted.
Right.
Now, so think about that. Jawan Taylor, who is from Cocoa, he's 1 year behind Martez. Martez from Apopka, so I'm a Martez fan. But the reality is, Jawan came in lower rated, got the last offer Florida had to offer him, and he's going to be a top 10 pick. So, people need to pay attention to that kind of stuff. But if you could tell them a little bit too about, before I forget, the other thing about even the red shirt, you still got to do 16 core hours. They just you just got to maintain you have to have a 2.0. But you're not going to be able to play that first.
That's correct.
So we talked a little bit about core GPA and that. So we went over that. So Now let's talk to them about the test scores. I'll let you handle that.
All right. Well, just to kind of piggyback a little bit off you said with that the 2.3. So the NCAA had this whole campaign called 2.3 or take a knee. So if you and all they were simply saying was, regardless of how good you were, regardless of whatever the situation was, you will automatically redshirt your freshman year going into that university. So and again, they put the piece in where you can't make up any of those grades that senior year. So, a couple of years, I think it's a year 2 of that, maybe year 3.
Year 2.
But yeah, so now they've made it where, you can't go in there over the summer and just try and cram all these courses in the whole 9 yards. So you got to really plan out. You really have to map out what it is you going to do academically. As parents, please make sure you stay on top of that. They have on the NCAA website, they have worksheets where you can write it out. 9th grade, what they should be taking. 10th grade, what they should be taking. 11th grade, what they should be taking. And then on the NCAA website, the Eligibility Center, they have all the courses listed per school. All you have to do is look up the school. All right. So I did just want to kind of just piggyback off of what you just said about that piece. Now, when it comes to the sliding scale, so far as your core GPA, I see kids all the time. They get it misunderstood. They see the GPA and all the way in the left-hand column. They think that's their unweighted. That is not. That is the core GPA. Usually, if you don't use some kind of program that calculates that, it has to be hand calculated by your counselor. All right? And when you start hand calculating, there is room for error. So that needs to be done probably 2 or 3 times. But that core GPA needs to coincide with the test score. All right? And so, for example, we can work our way from the bottom up. We talked about a 2.3. Of course, we want to strive higher than that. But so if you have a 2.3, you have to have a combined score of 900 on the SAT and a 75 on the ACT. And I know sometimes parents, when you see these real high numbers, 75, 74, what you have to do is divide that number by 4, and that'll give you your number. That'll let you know if you need a 21, 22, or so forth and so on. So as you go there, like I say, 2.3, you need a combined score of a 900 in order just to get in, just to be academically reassured. And also to piggyback off what you said, if you fall in that category, unless you're a phenom, they're probably gonna pass on you because there's no telling what's happening on that campus or what's happening in that room. They may need somebody to come in right away to fill a spot. And if you automatically have to sit on the bench because you haven't done what you're supposed to do academically, then guess what? We're gonna go on to the next kid at the next school.
Yeah, man. So give me an idea of what a kid with a 3.0 would have to have.
All right. So if you got a 3.0 core GPA, you got to have a 620. All right. You have a 620 on the score. So again, it's not hard to do, but again, 3.0. So basically, if you get a B average out of your core, which can be done, if you get a 620, it's really not hard to achieve a 620 on the test. All right. And so with that being said, your cores was better. I tell people this all the time. It's easier to get better grades over 4 years than it is to sit in that test for 4 hours. Right? So It's easy over a 4-year period to earn the 3.0 GPA than it is to sit up there and try and crack 1,000 on the test. And again, these are the bare minimums through the NCAA. These are not always guaranteed to get you in because certain schools have their own requirements to get in. If you want to go to Stanford, they're not looking at this scale. If you want to go to Notre Dame, some of them may, but again, you got to be that phenom dude.
Well, man, one of the things that parents really need to know is exactly that. Just because your kid qualifies technically, whether he has a 2.7, 3.0, 2.0, whatever, and he gets certain test scores, the reality is each school has certain standards. And some schools let in guys with the NCAA test scores, but they don't have to. And a lot of schools really don't work like that. That's one thing that is for certain. And one thing that I know that, I'm really getting tired of is just seeing parents complain about how the coaches aren't helping their kids get recruited, how the coaches aren't doing this. And the one thing you as a parent can control is the grades. Because I got a rule. My son can't play without a 3.0, and he knows that. Like, to me, nowadays it's so easy to get a 3.0. They don't even give kids homework. Like, we was coming up, we had homework every day. They don't want to give kids homework. So there's no reason, that these kids can't get that 3.0. So if your kid's not doing the grades in light of, there are some kids that have learning disabilities and stuff of that nature. But in light of that, your kid's playing Fortnite, he's doing PlayStation, he's doing all that kind of stuff. That's a problem. And I see it all the time because I know a mother right now, and she bugs the crap out of me, every person here, and she complains about her coach and all that. And then so one of my buddies at a real good school goes by there, and I just assume he had good grades because the way she's talking, he has great grades. The man had a 2.3 GPA.
Correct.
So I mean, you can't get into most schools with a 2.3 GPA, but you sure can't get into schools like you name, like the Vanderbilts, Notre Dame, Purdue's, all of those. So, we got a kid that has a 4.0 at one school, and he's getting those looks from those Vanderbilt, Purdue's. He's getting offered. Why? Because they know that he can handle the workload there.
Right.
Too, man. Don Draper says, "Why don't Florida high school coaches match? Why don't Florida high schools match the college level GPA requirements?" As a coach, what do you think about that? Because I've been saying that for years. To me, football is extracurricular, and if you're not handling the classroom, and like the end goal is to get a scholarship, in my opinion, hey, if you just out here for fun and you got under 2.3, why you even out here? You could be focusing on your grades. That's how I look at it. But I'm not a coach. So what's your thoughts?
Well, I'm gonna look at it this way, man. I mean, it's a lot of variables that go into that. You know what I mean? When you first start coaching, you of course you're gonna push those kids to do better. When you first start coaching, you want them to have this, and the 2.0 that's set by the state. But be honest with you, as a coach, you can't even you can't require that your kids make the team based on their grade. As long as they have a 2.0, you can't kick a kid off the team because he didn't meet your standard. As long as he meets the state standard or the district standard, he's eligible to play on your team. Now you can set personal goals for those kids, but you can't set your own, your own threshold for if you don't have a 2.5, you can't play on my team. I just want to put that out there. But go back to answering your question is, sometimes, man, with variables, I've been around a bunch of kids, a bunch of different circumstances, and sometimes kids just need something to hold on to. I've had kids that's been on my team with a 2.0. I'll tell you a quick story about a kid I had right now. I mean, right at the threshold, 1.9. We worked with him from 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, went on to play college ball, ended up in Dean's List in college. You understand what I'm saying? Ended up being, married, 2 kids. But if somebody would have gave up on him early, who's to know what he would have become? So you can't give up on them. Yeah, we do want to push them. We do want to make sure that they understand where the bar is. But maturity is a big thing. Right here, being in high school is where maturity is starting to flip. And so 9th grade is really hard on high school kids because as parents, especially our young boys, parents think because he's 6'5", he's grown. He still got a 14-year-old mind. You know what I mean? He's still playing in the dirt. He's still playing with frogs and stuff, man. So he's not taking it serious. He doesn't truly understand the severity of the situation right now. So they're going to stumble a little bit. And it's not to make an excuse for him. It's just a process. And if he doesn't have a strong structure behind him, he's probably going to mess up. So if he doesn't have a strong coaching structure, a strong family structure behind him, he's probably going to make that mistakes. And most kids at 14, 15 are probably the man of the house. They're probably making dinner for their young siblings while mom's still working, So it's a lot more on the plate than just an algebra book right now. So with that being said, man, I do want to press the bar up, but they also have some time, you know what I mean? And as a coach, I personally make sure I monitor their grades, especially in 9th grade, because it's so pivotal when it comes to their 12th grade year.
All right. Well, speaking of monitoring their grades, that brings us to our next topic. Preparation for test scores and grades. Basically, I'm a firm believer that kids should be prepping for taking these SATs and ACTs. I think that they need about a good 8 weeks of prep time. There are a lot of different. There are free prep courses. There's one-on-one SAT, ACT guys. Most of them are usually $35 to $40. I know one lady, Miss Wood. She's about $25, and she'll go to the library, and it's supposed to be an hour. She do it for 2 hours, and most of her kids' grades go up, their scores go up because she's old school. She like 70 years old, so she like the teachers that we had. So she's not, she ain't cutting no slack. So what's your thoughts on test prep? Like I said, I know for me, most of the kids I know who've done it, they do pretty well on the score. So you tell me what's your thoughts on it.
I mean, again, you got to look at the student as a whole. If you know that your child struggles, then you need to invest in your child. Especially if he's a person that is a prospect to go on to receive a full scholarship to college. I mean, why miss out on a $500,000 education because you didn't want to invest a couple of $100? But yet, guess what? He got the brand new 9s that came out. He got the brand new 10s that came out. Right. Take that $500, put it in his brain instead of on his feet, and you'd be surprised what you get. You know what I mean? So we got to prioritize, certain things when it comes to our children. You got to make sure that do we want to have the fresh kicks? I get it, but guess what? I want to have a job where he can buy his own kicks later. You know what I mean? Because them J's will go out of style. Jordan popping them off every month, I guess. So it don't matter at that point. But as a parent, you do have to invest in your child. And like you said, there are some free ones, there are some paid ones. But if I had to work 2 or 3 jobs to make sure he can get that full-time scholarship, well, guess what? Sign me up.
Yeah, man. I mean, I agree with it, man, because, one of the things that I've seen is, like I said previously, I've seen a lot of kids that they've had the opportunity to do some test prep, and they've done a pretty good job, once they had the opportunity. And I think that, worst case scenario, like you said once before, even if they just go back and make sure their geometry is tight, their algebra is tight, make sure, because a lot of that kind of stuff is on the SAT. And the other thing is nowadays, everyone can use a composite score, which, allows you to take the best scores that you had.
Right.
So when would you recommend kids start taking the SAT, ACT in your expertise?
Again, so if you look at the test, right? So you have the SAT, the ACT. So one of the big myths is certain schools like one test over the other. That's not necessarily true. They give 2 tests because they're geared 2 different ways, right? So the SAT test is geared from the math standpoint with a lot of geometry, right? But you don't take geometry until 10th grade. Right. So if your kid is good in geometry, then I highly suggest you take the SAT. If your child is good in algebra, right, I highly suggest you take the ACT, okay? So with that being said, now, if you're from the reading standpoint, if your child is good with coming to conclusions and answers, right, after he reads a passage, he can break that down. He needs to take the SAT, right? The ACT is geared towards more speed, right? Reading through a passage, coming up with a conclusion real quickly. So they all have their own method to the madness. So you have to understand how to break that down. And you also have to understand your child and his learning process. So that's that. I don't think you should take the SAT until you mastered geometry. It's just that simple. I mean, how am I taking the SAT if I'm halfway through the course? There's no way in the world I should be able to pass it. If I'm not doing algebra, if I'm not doing well in algebra, how am I going to pass the ACT if I haven't mastered the curriculum? So with that being said, you need to take the exam when you have mastered those courses, and C is nowhere near mastery. You need to have at least a high B or better in those courses where you can do extremely well.
Let me ask you a question. So if, let's say, some kids, like they're in the 8th grade, 7th grade, they're taking Algebra 1. 8th grade, they're taking geometry. They go to high school, take Algebra 2, now it's their 10th grade. Would you recommend they do a refresher? Because, they haven't been in Algebra 1 for, since 7th grade, and then we talking about this in the 10th grade.
Definitely. I mean, I suggest you take a refresher right after you take it in 10th grade. If you're a regular, you took it as a regular student, I suggest you take a refresher right before you take the exam. Okay. Because again, you have one teacher that teaches one way, your 2 tools to use on that test another way. But I do want to say this about 7th and 8th graders taking high school courses a little early. We got to be cautious, parents. These school systems, they have a certain agenda about what they're pushing. If your child is not ready for that, and I understand my counselors, I love them, I work with them every day. and they have a job to do and they have certain standards they have to follow. But if your child is not prepared to take those courses, please don't put them in those courses, because guess what else happens? This happened to me. We have a child that walked into high school with a D in Algebra 1 from 8th grade. Well, guess what happened to his 9th grade season? He's deemed ineligible because he has a 1.0 technically in a high school class. Now, is it passing? Yes, a D is passing. But he is now missing his fall year of his 9th grade because he received a D. So you got to be cautious as a parent. Please stay on these kids. Don't just go with what people say. Investigate, call, ask questions. I mean, email me if you need to know. Whatever. Call AG, he can get to me, whatever the case may be. Because with that being said, you got to make sure that you stay on these things, because everybody don't always have your kids' best interest in mind.
And since you went there, that's something that was something I wanted to put on. We don't have it on the agenda, but we're gonna take the time to explain. A lot of parents think that their kids are taking high school courses. I know parents who don't even know their kids are taking, and now your kid is going to high school, like you said, with under a 2.0, starting his freshman year off like that. So we got to make sure that as a parent, you even when they're, especially in 8th grade, because like I'll cut to the chase. Orange County will make kids start taking stuff in the 7th and 8th grade for their agendas, their own agendas. But
Correct.
you want to make sure that your kid is passing and that he has a certain GPA, because like you said, they can be deemed ineligible to play sports because they have grades that are under that 2.0 threshold. So, I hope that more and more parents take the time to make sure that, like with my son, he's taking high school courses, but I made it perfectly clear to these teachers and to the school, hey, if his grade slips below 85, I need y'all to contact me, because we cannot afford to go to school with C's. That's
Correct.
the worst thing. Like, we can't go into high school with C's. Because like you said earlier, the reality is, the more they bang it out their freshman and sophomore year, and even their junior year, then they have more room to play with.
Sure.
What you can't do is play around your freshman and sophomore year, because you have no room to play with.
Yeah. And you just said a point, man. You talked about C's. I tell people all the time, and I'm going to say something without saying something. C's are worse than D's.
Exactly.
Because you can't retake a C. Once a C has been placed on the report card on the transcript, it cannot be retaken. So, and again, C's hurt you. C's do nothing but drag you down. They drag you down. They drag you down. So you got to be very careful about that. I'm glad you made that point about the 85. At least you set a threshold. Also, I do want to go back to this. Progress book. Here in Orange County, they got progress book. I know they have maybe different names around the world, around the states, but you can set the parameters for your kids to get text messages on your phone when your son, for example, your son comes and he makes a C on the exam. It'll send you a text message, AG, to say, hey, your son just received a C on exam 2, or he didn't turn in homework assignment 4. So, use the technology that's available to us. It's free. All you got to do is go into the guidance office and get a PIN code, man.
Yeah. So, hey, man. Hey, bruh. I think we went over some good stuff tonight. I think that, this is probably going to be one of our less viewed, because this is not the entertainment part, that people really want to hear about. But this, honestly, is probably the most realist part that people need to hear. All the other stuff we're talking about, recruiting, it means nothing if none of this is in place. It really does.
Sure.
And you know that, and I know that. And, and like I said, I just want to reiterate, parents, please don't complain to me about a coach and your son's playing time or what he's not doing if your son does not have the grades and the test scores. Don't do that. That's unfair. We all have a responsibility to help these kids. You as the parent, the coaches as administrators, the principals, the counselors, their friends, we all have a responsibility. But as a parent, the one thing you can control is the kids' grades. And you're not here to be their friends, their partners. At the end of the day, you should have a standard in your household that, forget the NCAA. Forget what the NCAA standard is. My standard is a 3.0. You can't play in my house without a 3.0 core GPA. You can't play. I don't give a dang if you're the number 1 player in the country. You will sit the bench, because that's just the way I roll. But like my grandmama rolled like that with me, I had to have a 3.5. It's just what it is. And because, like you said earlier, I'm a firm believer in this. A kid will do whatever he needs to do to meet the standard if he really care about whatever sport it is.
Sure.
If he, like, I didn't want to make a 3.5, but I knew in order to play, I had to have a 3.5. So guess what I had? 3.55. 3.55. Because I did whatever I need to do.
Yeah.
So I think these kids, I think that they will meet the standard. And the last thing I want to talk, we're about to get out of here, but the next week we're going to talk about character and different situations because we have a lot of young men in Central Florida that are having character issues right now. I'm talking to college coaches. You got one of the issues is definitely drugs. Other issue is the guys on that's a real prominent issue right now. The other issues you got guys out here fighting, videotaping it. You got guys out here beating women. So that's something that we're going to talk about next week. That once again that comes down to a lot of parenting. So we're gonna get in touch with that. I'm done off my soapbox. You got anything for the people, man?
No, I know you got a couple questions. See, I know we're gonna get out of here, but I see Don Draper did ask a great question about HBCUs. And for those that don't know what HBCUs are, it's historically black colleges and universities. I know being in Florida, people may not understand there's more than just Bethune-Cookman and FAMU out there. You got the great Hampton University, the real HU. See, look at you. See them Texas boys. Oh, y'all got a Texas Southern. Y'all done lost y'all mind. But anyway.
Prairie View A&M. Paul.
Yeah. Man, listen, man. Prairie View had won the game in 300 years, man. They finally won one and turned the city out. But we're going to leave that alone. But Prairie View got that money, though.
The only HBCU that they do the Olympic trials at. So let's cut to, so it must be nice. Prairie View
nice.
campus is the nicest campus in the country, hands down, as far as HBCUs.
But I'm going to show you a leader. Hampton University is the first historically black college that brought a lacrosse team. So let's get that straight. Understand that. No, see, but guess what? We like the Olympics. But look, we giving scholarships now to a school. Let's be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. We giving scholarships now to students that look like you and I in a predominantly white sport. We got our eyes open, man. It's the real HU, man. Don't worry, I'll come with my HU hat next week.
Y'all stole it from the other HU because they had it first.
No, negative. The
positive.
I bet you a six-pack of Welch's great. Negative.
Yeah. Hey, positive. I'll put the link up for everybody to see because matter of fact, they just canceled HU's lacrosse team.
Cut that out. We ain't talking about all that now. Yeah. So with all that being said, so the HBCU requirements are still the same so far as Division I because they are the majority of them are Division I schools. Some are Division II schools. You have to look into it and see. And again, there's a sliding scale for Division II schools as well. So when you go onto the website, when you go to Eligibility Center, they have Division II sliding scale, and they also have a Division I sliding scale on there as well.
Yeah. Well, man, all I know is this, bro. We talking about the people don't realize the Division II is the same standard. And, people don't realize that, actually, a lot of times it's higher than Division I AA or Division I. And people think the HBCU standards are lower, and they're not. The same standard that you got to get in the Florida State is the same standard you got to get in the FAMU. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think it's, a standard that's a lot lower, and it's not. The only difference is really at the Division II level that they have as many scholarships to offer. Correct. They might have 55 over versus 85.
And they can split them, and that's the difference. They can split them.
Right.
So you can get a partial going to Division II. Division I, you can't get a partial scholarship. It's all or nothing. You know what I mean?
I've had to let a few. You have guys that they always want to tell people that they play, Division I football or Division I basketball, and then they'll throw in, I was there on a partial scholarship academically. And I have to text them. I won't put them out there, but I put it on Messenger. I'll be like, look, bro, don't tell nobody else that because that's not what it is. So so man.
Nah, it is what it is, man. So I just want to clean up. Let me see. Is anything else on there? Anybody else ask?
Nah, Don gonna always ask the good questions.
I like Don.
Don is all right. Everybody else on here is, what's up, Troy Engel. I gotta say what's up. That's Tanner's dad. And so that's some good stuff.
Hey
Melissa
man,
said,
hey, listen. I don't know if I ever had a chance to tell Troy, man, that was a bad boy, man. I like Tanner, man. He really impressed me, man. Not only as a player, but when I had the opportunity to even talk to him, man, he impressed me as a kid too, man. Well, he didn't even a kid, but a young man. So Troy, you did a great job. You and your wife did a great job with him, man. And I hope he's doing well up there at NC State. I had a chance to talk with the coach up there, Coach Huxtable, and he said he was doing extremely well, man. So I'm proud of him, man. That's good. Even though he was on the other side of the field, but I was really, glad to see him do well and get a chance.
Well, man, I'm sure Troy appreciate hearing that, man. Tanner's a great kid, for certain. It's just what it is. So, and he was one of those kids that had those fire GPAs, like that 4.2, all that kind of stuff. So, when he was on the bus trip, one of my memorable moments is he got offered by Stanford on the bus trip.
Yeah.
Which most kids don't get offered by Stanford. And he was excited, but he ended up choosing NC State. But just to be able to have those options, and that's what kids want. You want all the options you can available to you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this too about him. I'm gonna say
quick. Vic Lamar Carr posted FCS has 63 scholarships and FBS has 85, and that's really like you talk about 22 scholarships is the difference maker. But like you said, that 63 they can give 8, like they can split it up where 50 kids get full rides, and they split up the other 13 scholarships between 30 kids.
Right.
But that's something that I appreciate you, Vic, for throwing out there. But I think, man, that's pretty much all we got, man.
I ain't finished talking, man. I got one more thing to say, man.
You always got something to say, but you didn't have a damn thing to say when you had your first 5 minutes. You didn't have nothing to say. You said you over here, oh man.
Because I do want to say this, man. I'm be honest with you. So just speaking of a kid like Tanner, man, cut it out, man. You ain't got nothing to do. Speaking of a kid like Tanner,
wife, you don't.
Oh, don't hurt me now. Come on, dog. Hey man, that hurt me.
She keep walking by me, and she walking by for a reason. So hurry up.
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna just say this to put it out there. So for some of my players like Tanner Ingle, right? He may not have always had all of the measurables, so at 6'3" or whatever. But guess what? He did when he came to academics. It made him 6'3", right? Because guess what they knew? They knew he wasn't going to be a problem in the classroom. Character-wise, it made him 6'3". He could already play, but he didn't have the prototypical measurables. So guess what? His academics actually pushed him over that threshold, and he's playing at a Division I school. Now, if he was a 2.5 kid, even if he was a 3.0 kid, they probably wouldn't even touch him. He'd be playing at maybe Louisiana Lafayette or something like that. Nothing wrong with that. Still full ride. But the type of school he's in right now is because he took care of business in the building as well as on the grass, man. So, I want to say all that. I know AG trying to get your ball head played with up there, man. So I'm going to let you go, man. I know you're ready to go. But I'm going to say this before I go. Hey, Coach Hayes Football, check it out. We still on YouTube, man, at Coach Hayes Football. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and what's the other one? Instagram, Facebook, and whatever it is. All of them at Coach Hayes Football, man. No, I don't do Snapchat. I ain't got that kind of time, man. I don't got a Snapchat. I'm on YouTube at Coach Hayes Football.
That's what it was.
Facebook at Coach Hayes Football. Instagram at Coach Hayes. Oh, Twitter at Coach Hayes Football. That's what it was, man.
You finally got a Twitter?
I got it. Remember Balin? Hey, Balin got on me because I had 3 followers, man.
Right. How many you got now?
10. So y'all lay up on me. Y'all help me out.
I followed you. So we good.
I know you made 10.
All right, cool. I appreciate that.
Hey, and this Saturday, I'm dropping a new tape on are you coaching football or physics, man? The game easy for the kid. So look out for it this Saturday.
Well, when you dropping it?
Saturday.
What time?
Throughout the day, you give me a time, it'll be on the table.
What I want to do is, if you could, make sure it's on there by 8:00, and
in the morning.
Night.
Okay.
And we'll shoot it out to all these youth coaches.
Okay.
And we need to have a show about these youth coaches, because I think that a lot of these guys right now, they're more worried about themselves than actually helping to prepare these kids.
Sure, man. They worry about running around with the rings and jackets, man. Right. And the kids be left behind. So again, Saturday, man, we dropping Are You Coaching Football or Physics? On this Saturday, I drop it, like I say, by 8:00. And hey, like, comment, and subscribe. Other than that,
peace out. Yeah, y'all be good. We appreciate y'all. Thanks a lot.
peace. See y'all, man. See y'all next Tuesday, 9 o'clock.
Next Tuesday, 9 o'clock.